everyone, Willow here. Welcome back to the final week of starting out solitary for 2018. This week's topic is how often do I perform spells and why? When I first read this week's topic, the first question that popped up in my mind after I read it was, well, how important? What is the purpose? What is the meaning behind my spirituality? And after I asked that question to myself, the answer was connection with self, higher self, everything that I'm surrounded by, as above, so below, as within, so without, to gain knowledge and understanding, to evolve. And there are a lot of questions that I have on my spiritual path, which I question time and time again. And I look around and there's different people who practice differently within the pagan umbrella. And then you've got, Christianity, Catholics and Muslims, and they all have their own different spiritual beliefs and practices. And so even though we may believe in a same spiritual path, at the end of the day, really, it's how spiritual we are. And spiritual for me is an active word. It's what we practice. So I truly believe that even though I don't have the answers to all of my questions just yet, I'm still, walking my path and I'm still learning. And so I guess to answer this week's topic is, how long is a piece of string? For me, spells, magic is very important. And I try to live it. And when I say try, yes, there are times, there's probably 10% times where I can kind of lose my focus or my momentum or, my values. But once I'm able to bring all of that in, then it makes it easier for me to walk ahead. Yes, I'm faced with certain situations in life. Some days are easier than others. Some days are full of bliss and joy and blessings and abundance, and other days are really hard. They're storms. And I see I've said this many times, I see the potential in creating magic in every moment. And it goes a little bit like something like this for me. For me, spells are not just, as I've said many times again before, they're not about standing at the altar, having all the tools. Spells are intentions, words, thoughts, followed by actions. So if, for me, that is a significance of spells, then everything is a spell. How come some days when I wake up and in the first hour, I feel like it's one of the worst days already, and I just say to myself, today can't get any worse. And obviously that's an intention, that's a thought in my mind. They're words that I may speak, and so followed by that are my actions. I will believe that because I'm in that moment, I'm feeling that, and everything I see will be a really bad, shitty day, and it will just get worse and worse. And yes, there are days also where we wake up in the morning and think, geez, everything is going really well. And again, the same thing, our actions followed by our thoughts and our intentions and words spoken follows through. Yes, sometimes we can be pleasantly surprised or, horrified or saddened or frustrated by something turning so quickly. And in those situations, I need to evaluate, and I take a look around and I say, right, are there any lessons that I need to learn? Are there any lessons that other people who are connected with this same situation that I'm facing, do they need to learn something? So I think, life's full of lessons and all that kind of stuff. So I live my spiritual practice, and it doesn't suit everyone. And it's not the same as what someone who is not practicing similar than I am, and that's okay. It really is. We all have our opinions at the end of the day, and our own experiences, and we share the best that we can in those circumstances. Sometimes I question, is it meant to be? Or sometimes I ask myself, what am I meant to do now? Where am I meant to go? And I mean as in direction, and how to deal with certain things. So, as I've said many a times before, creating magic in the mundane is very important for me. And it's not all rainbows and lollipops and sunshine, but it goes a little bit something like this for me. when I find certain days that are hard, especially with the kids, we haven't slept, then I will speak to my guides for assistance. Sometimes I feel drawn to the elements and say, right, there's a bit of passion, there's a bit of fire going on here with maybe a bit of water. We need to go outside. So if it's a waning moon, for example, that is good for letting go and releasing. The phase of the moon when it goes smaller, so you're making your intentions and your spell work are for letting go or reducing, say, for example. So if I'm going to want to use earth energy and go outside, and I feel that also with going outside, we do get a lot of, we do get a sense of balance with all of the elements, you know, the sun, the earth, the air, the wind, and water if we're watering the garden or drinking water or whatever. So if it's a waning moon, then we'll pull out some weeds, you know, they grow back. What's the word that I'm looking for? They don't grow back as quick. Or if I'm wanting, again, the same earth energy and it's a waxing moon, then maybe repotting some plants or planting some seeds sometimes, regardless of whether or not they work, is what I do with the little ones. Another is, you know, we make full moon, well, I make full moon water. So providing it's really dependent on what you're putting in your full moon water. You know, there are some herbs that you shouldn't be taking or should be ingesting, crystals as well. Some of them, you know, don't sit very well with water or don't mix very well with water. Some can be toxic. So depending on how you've made your full moon water with those energies, maybe adding a drop or two, you know, into your glass of water or a coffee or a tea or whatever it is, that's magic that you have created and you're using it for those sorts of moments. Because yes, there are times where I don't feel like, you know, spending time at my altar and using all my tools and doing those sorts of spells, but I still like to use some of the spell work that I have already created for those sorts of moments. As I've said again many a times, oils and incense blends that I've created, and just, you know, it's just a second of burning, or you know, burning some charcoal and putting some incense on, or dabbing myself with some oil, or even in certain situations just being guided by earth and spending time outdoors, or even just simply asking the question, asking for help, some signs as well, and just paying attention. I remember when I first started on this path, it was very overwhelming for me. The more I read, the more things that I discovered I needed and I wanted to learn about. You know, of course, there was astrology, there's the planets, there's the elements, there's the goddess and god and goddesses and gods and different pantheons, and the fae and the moon, and if I didn't say that already, the Sabbats. And the more I read, as I said, the more overwhelmed I felt. So even though, yes, classes with Crimson helped greatly for me, there was still a lot of the times where I would learn something, and although I can understand it with my head, it wasn't until I truly understood it with my heart and with my being that it made sense. So those sorts of things I would revisit once I was you know, in the mood, I guess. Moon, for example, the moon energy, I felt connected from a very young age with the moon, as many do on this path, but I wanted to understand more about, you know, about her. So for 3 months, I remember, and I've got a journal, I was actually just flicking through this, I spent time outside from the full moon, from the new moon to the full moon, you know, for 3 cycles. And I remember at that time saying to myself, I'm connecting here, and just looking, you know. And then when I read back on my notes, just to see how far I'd come by the 3rd month, and already in that time how much I progressed, and I felt a greater sense of connection with the moon. My cycles, my monthly cycles, were actually aligning with the moon at that time as well. At the beginning of this year, for me, there's a lot of people who talk about the moon and moon energy, and there's a lot of reference to the moon, but also sun is just as important too. And this was a great discovery for me during one of my classes with Crimson Fire. And so I spent time outdoors as well with the sun energy, you know, sun deities. What else was I going to say? You know, certain different herbs that I was growing at that time, if they were, you know, related to the sun, spending time there, making some tonics or whatever. So I really immersed myself in sun energy, and sun is very important because it's life. It's what, you know, it's what brings all of us to life as well. So that's pretty much all my thoughts on this week's topic. I can hear the little ones are getting restless again. So I'm wishing you the happiest holidays and all the best for 2019, and may it be everything and more that you wish for. So see you next year.